Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the Audio Wave Network studios, and is sponsored by the Ford Foundation and now a content partner to BridgeDetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens-Davidson.
Disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show. We want to thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people on the east side of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. We drop a new episode every week, so be sure to turn on those notifications. Joining us today is Joel Howrani Heeres. Joel is the director of the Office of Sustainability and is the assistant director of the General Services Department at the City of Detroit. Joel, finally, welcome back to Authentically Detroit.
Thanks so much. Great to have you. I'm so glad you're able to have me tonight.
Yes, it's great. We're glad you're here. He's getting ready to say it's great to have you, but you know, our home is your home, Joe. We're happy that you've been able to join us.
I think Joel hosts so many community forums that he is not used to being a guest.
Yeah, he's not used to being the interviewer. He's used to being the convener.
The convener.
This is true.
You probably convene more people in your position than anybody else who works for the city of Detroit. Disclaimer, this is just your opinion, but is that true?
We already did that at the beginning of the show.
I was just teasing.
Not sure, but planning does a lot of meeting with folks. So,
yeah, I want to talk. I know we're going to get to this a little later on, but I definitely want to talk about the planning process that the Office of Sustainability curated a few years ago to develop an overall sustainable agenda for the city of Detroit, which I thought was absolutely amazingly done, Donna Givens-Davidson. I don't know about you, but I thought it was very, very well done. So, how is this day finding each of you?
It's good.
Yeah,
it's good. You know, I'm back to my senses. My mother has been relocated. She's happy. She's calling me all the time, making demands on me. And so, she's doing better now.
I was telling the first time I met her mama, she was telling me what to do. She had come to an annual meeting and we had a bunch of stuff that we were giving out. And she was like, you know what? This is too much stuff for me to carry. She said, I'm going to go sit down and what you're going to do is you're going to bring me all of the things to my table. Thanks. And I was like, yes, ma'am.
Welcome
and I didn't even know.
Welcome to my childhood. That's how it kind of went. But no, it's really a great thing. I just want to give a shout out. I know we do it at the end to Samaritan Manor, which is on the fourth floor of the Samaritan Center. I have to say that from the moment that she went there, she was just treated with kindness. The staff there are all wonderful. They even let Luna visit with me this weekend. Nice. And so imagine my 4-year-old, well, she's almost 4, so I'm calling her 4. She's 3 and almost 4-year-old granddaughter coming with me to visit somebody inside of a nursing home. Right now, she had a little mask on her face, and I had the mask on my face, and they gave her all of this candy and these chips, so she thought that she was trick-or-treating.
Oh, wow.
It was great.
Wow.
Well, we took our kids to my wife's uncle's home as well in Flint last weekend, and it was amazing to see the faces of all the residents light up when they saw kids, just kids being kids. It was just like pretty cool. So
yeah. It's really great. My mom had been in a place where they, were so restrictive on visitation, we could barely see her. And the welcome and openness really makes a difference in the mental health of senior citizens. They need to see people they love. And so what a blessing that we were able to spend that time together.
I mean, 3 generations right there, just missing the one, right?
Was it 4 generations or 3?
Yeah, well, if Sarah had been there.
That's true. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's right. Amazing.
Yeah.
Joe, how is this day finding you?
It's great. It's great. I'm happy that more fall-like weather is in the air now, and
it's been pretty today, hasn't it?
It's been gorgeous. Sun coming out. Finally stopped raining. That was a little much, but doing good.
I heard from residents that some folks got water in their basements. I mean, it rained for a couple of days,
Yeah, it didn't stop for, I think, 36 hours. So,
yeah. And so, the calls are coming in. The calls are definitely coming in. But we want to welcome you once again, Joel, and it's time for Hot Takes. That's right. That's where we run down some of the week's top headlines in the city of Detroit. Today's hot takes are Jamon Jordan, Detroit's unofficial historian, is now its official one. That is by Bryce Huffman at Bridge Detroit. So Jamon Jordan, who finally decided to be a guest on our show this past summer, has been named in a ceremonial title and in a ceremonial role as Detroit's first historian. And it was a big to-do yesterday, big press conference. He was all over television. And we want to say bravo to Jamon Jordan. I mean, who... There's nobody else that we can think of that is more deserving of this honor than Jamon Jordan.
I can't even think of anybody who is as deserving as Jamon. He's amazing. And, what I really, really hope is that we move from an unofficial historian to an official historian.
Right, because
to an official historian to somebody who has more than a ceremonial title.
Right, he needs to be paid. Reparations
is on the ballot. And we can't even have a serious conversation about reparations without having a serious conversation about Detroit's history.
You better say that.
And nobody knows our history better than Jamon Jordan. And so, City Council, I think it's possible people are going to vote for reparations next Tuesday. And if they do, then I certainly hope the City Council looks at him as the preeminent expert. I serve on an advisory board for the Wright Museum.
Yeah.
And there's been a reparations task force on Tuesday evenings. So I'm a member who doesn't go because I'm doing this instead. But Jamon has helped lead the way. And I really think that if we're going to make him this official historian, then we've got to begin integrating our history into both our, public communications and, all of that, but also our public policy. And that kind of connects to you, Joel. I mean, when we look at sustainability issues, and I do that in my class, the sustainability issues
class
that we
at Columbia
have right
University.
We always try to locate those sustainability issues in an understanding of the history of Detroit. How did these people get to live in places which are so climate vulnerable? It was not coincidence. All over the United States. One of the people who is helping to teach that class through his book, Toxic Debt, is somebody who you may know, Josiah Rector.
I don't actually know him, no.
Okay, he was he got his PhD from Wayne State, and he studied and worked in this community for a number of years, and has written an amazing book that's coming out next April. But it's really connecting the present to the past, understanding that you cannot have present public policy without looking at the past. How do we get here? And therefore, what debt do we owe the people who are here and who are suffering the consequences of the sustainability challenges that we have today?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think every challenge we're facing today, sustainability or otherwise, is rooted in history. Thinking about Benton Harbor and what's happening there right now in terms of lead in the water. That's, decades in the making, more than decades in the making. So.
Yeah. And the cool thing about Jamon is he's always going to do an acknowledgement of the land that we stand on, the indigenous land that we inhabit, but he's also going to highlight the contributions of Black Americans to what Detroit is today. And in his speech yesterday at the press conference, he listed 5 facts that he wanted of people to know about Detroit. Number 1, Detroit is the gateway to freedom, right? As the northern city that borders Canada, Jordan said he wishes Detroiters more fully understood that Detroit was sometimes the last stop on the Underground Railroad. Detroit's role in baseball history, one of the founding teams of the Negro Baseball League, Jamon wanted to highlight. Jazz and blues were just as important as Motown in the city of Detroit, right? And then I'll throw in gospel. I mean, look at look at the tremendous gospel roots here. The battle for civil rights was also fought here. And Detroit is the cradle of Black nationalist thought and activism. I mean, I cannot wait to see the kind of narratives that cascade from, I don't know if he has an office or whatever. I don't know what this entails, but
it needs to be more than ceremonial.
It definitely does.
We need these stories to be told. We really need to teach these stories to our young people and take Detroit history, Black history, as actual history worthy of being taught to kids. When young people learn this, it builds pride. It builds an understanding that you come from something great.
You better say it.
And, we need to make sure that our Charles Wright Museum does a great job of having the kinds of exhibits that highlight these things, standing exhibits that highlight this information so that our young people can always walk through at an educational level and understand we're not coming from an inferior place, which is what the world says about us. We're coming from a place which really, really was groundbreaking in so many ways. And that's something that in my study of history of the city of Detroit, I found so much pride. My people have been here since the 1920s, early 1919, 1920s. On both sides. And so reading about this and understanding what life was like when my parents were kids, my mom's 88 years old.
Yeah.
Is really, really meaningful. So I'm so glad he's going to hold it up for other kids.
Yeah. Our story does not begin with inferiority.
I love that.
In hot takes, Target. This is a real hot take. Target to open a new store in the city of Detroit, right near the Whole Foods. This is by Cranes Detroit. A small format outpost of the Minneapolis-based retail chain is expected to take 32,000 square feet in the development generally referred to as south of Mack Avenue. The construction time frame has not been revealed, but Target is coming, much to the pleasure and exuberance and dismay of so many Detroiters that I saw on my timeline last night. What say y'all?
Can we have an adult conversation about this?
I don't think we can.
I don't even remember what city I was in. I went into a small format Target.
It's one in Chicago that I love.
I felt like it was. Yeah. I was in CVS. I was like, what like in the world CVS, Rite Aid, am I looking at? I was waiting for everything, and instead, it's the kind of thing, and the placement is connected to the desire to address the shopping needs of college students. But it doesn't really help me because when I go to Target, most of the time I'm trying to get Luna toys or clothes. And so I'm going to have to leave the city. And I don't understand how a city with as much vacancy as Detroit, in areas near downtown and, areas west and east, everywhere, we have all of this vacancy. Can't we get a real Target? I don't want to drive outside. And so I think some people are sort of like, that's cool.
But does Detroit want big box chains?
Yes. Really? Yeah, I think that, when you look at Meijer and the impact of Meijer on the east side and the west side, those big box chains work. The first Target I remember going to was the Bel Air shopping mall.
I remember that Target.
Road.
Yeah.
Can we bring a Target back there? I'm not saying downtown, but I think that when you look and someone compared it to Meijer on Jefferson, and hey, that's a beautiful Meijer, I have to be honest.
I went in there for the first time the other day. I really enjoyed it. I was disappointed that it was only self-checkout though, but I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, but Meijer, that's Meijer's third store, not their first.
Yeah.
Target's first store, and they say, this is a good first step. And I'm not convinced there will be a second step or a third step because from what I'm hearing in other places, they're closing some of these stores in other urban areas still. So reopen the one at Bel Air, and I'm going to celebrate. Reopen one somewhere else, I'm going to celebrate. Yes, we want a big box store where we can get toys for our kids. We don't have Toys R Us anymore.
Yeah.
That Target used to be right in the same shopping mall as Toys R Us and Kids R Us.
Sure was at Bel Air.
Yes. That was the place.
That was the spot.
Home Depot. You get everything. And now, I have to go so far. I'm like, which distant Target do I want to go to get my needs met as a grandmother? But
although I do think I live in Woodbridge, so I don't live too far away from that Target. And so
I love Woodbridge, by the way.
I do. Thank you. I do think that there is a bit of a retail desert for those the types of products that Target may have. So I think it could fill a niche depending how well it does in terms of stocking and what it has.
I mean, there's definitely leakage in Midtown. I'm wondering though, if it's going to be reminiscent of, let's say, like the small scale Target that's like on the south side of Chicago that looks more like, you know, like a CVS or a Rite Aid. I'm wondering if it will serve, you know, a different, you know.
So I just hope it's not as small as some of them.
Yeah.
So the good news is I learned that some of the small format stores are like 12,000 to 20,000 square feet, and this one is 33.
Yeah.
So it's real possible that you're going to have more goods to serve the population, and I hope we get them.
Yeah. So there are people who were really happy, and then there were people who were mad. This is gentrification.
And then there were people who were mad that I wasn't happy. I got called by a good friend of mine, Donna Downer. I was like, wow, Kim Trent, I'm calling you out. She called me Donna Downer on Facebook. I was like, whoa.
Oh man, it's not too far. Well, the Target ain't too far from me, and I happen to enjoy Targets on Saturdays. Let me tell you, during the panoramic, the panacea, whatever we're calling it, Saturdays when everything else when everything was closed and Target was open, that was the place that I went to for community. I would walk. It was the one place I can go to get out of the house. So I got to say, I'm happy to see it.
Well, I also think, you know, if it can pull some leakage in from Amazon, from people ordering things online, then that's also beneficial, right? I mean, I know we order things that we would have to drive to a big box store online because of the convenience, you know. So if it's local,
you're right. If it's local, and if it has toys and children's clothes, I'm gonna be super happy. If it doesn't, but it has adult clothes and household goods, I'll be kind of happy. I'm still looking for my full size.
Can you get a case of toilet paper? Is the question.
Well, you know what I've read about these small format stores is a lot of times their packaging is also small, and so they have small rolls because again, it's college student
it's
focused.
Real cute. Yeah, like University of Chicago students go to the one in the south side, right?
Yeah. What's up, Wayne State? You're going to do well, and I'm not against that. I just won't celebrate it until I can get the things I want to purchase. Sure. So I'm going to wait and see. How about that? I'm going to be an optimist and say maybe
no more Donna Downer.
No more Donna Downer.
But you want to know the other thing that people aren't really talking about? We're talking about the Target, but there are supposed to be over 300 units above this Target. And I want to see how these units are going to be financed, what sort of rates that they're going for. I'm for real.
Okay, Orlando.
That's what I'm concerned about.
Let me help you out.
Yeah.
They're not going to be affordable unless this is a studio. It's on Woodward. They're going to be tax subsidized, and this is going to be considered progress. And I'm not saying
same
it isn't.
Script, different
same
cast.
Script, different. Well, same script, just down the street. This is what we see all up and down, and this is a decision. And I'm not opposed to people being able to move into cool new places downtown. I am keenly aware of a housing affordability crisis in our city, and the impact of that crisis on depopulation of our city, because people who can't afford $1,700 a month, $1,800 a month for a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment have to leave the city right now.
Did I tell you I asked the mayor this question? I don't know if we had this conversation, but I happened to have the audience of Mayor Duggan at the Mackinac Policy Conference, and I asked him this question because I know that the mayor and some of our congressional leadership is going to challenge the census results, but the census puts us at around 632,000. Again, a continual drop and decline in population. And I asked him, is there some sort of a linkage between the housing affordability crisis and depopulation? The affordable units that the city is subsidizing are mainly studio apartments, and they're incongruent for families. Families cannot reside there, right? And so families are leaving the city. I know families that have left the city because they can't afford to live here in the city in quality, affordable housing. The mayor said to me, he said to me, well, families aren't trying to live in apartments. They're buying houses. They're buying houses from the land bank, and they're fixing it up, and they're moving their families into the homes. And I sort of like pushed back a little bit, but he held his ground. I think it is a grave misstep, overlook, whatever, if we continue to build affordable units for people without families. Right.
I think that it's a decision that we make. And I think public policy decisions have public policy consequences. If we are intentional about keeping families, we're not going to just allow some of them, and some of them are purchasing homes from the land bank and fixing them up.
They got the money to do it if they need affordable units.
Some of them just know how to do it. I know people who are doing that. Okay. The question is the scale. How many units are being fixed up like that for families in the land bank in comparison to the number of people who are just looking for a place to live and don't have the time, energy, or resources to fix up a home? It's so much easier to move to Warren, to move to Harper Woods, to move to Roseville, to move to Southfield, to move to Oak Park, Lincoln Park, all of the parks. It's so much easier to do that than it is to stay in the city of Detroit. And I say this with love, knowing people in my family and elsewhere who are trying to stay in the city and looking for quality, affordable housing. It's hard out here. Mm-hmm. And let's do more. And I think as we look at building a sustainable city, we can do. I don't even have a problem with downtown being for rich people, right? Downtowns all over America are for people with money. What I'm saying is we need to match that effort with an effort inside of neighborhoods, parallel effort to be as intentional about building up that neighborhood with affordable housing as we are building up downtown with high-end housing. Make no mistake, I understand there's nowhere in America where a downtown apartment is going to cost what it costs to live inside of a neighborhood.
Legit. All right. That wraps up Hot Takes. If you have pieces that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. For our feature discussion this week, we are talking to Joel about a series of climate town hall meetings that the Office of Sustainability is scheduled to host throughout the first week of November. Joel, what is the Office of Sustainability hoping to glean from these town halls?
No, I'm glad you asked, Orlando. So we kicked off, we actually kicked off the Detroit climate strategy actually right around the time the pandemic was really hitting hard, in March of 2019. And so we actually ended up having to take a pretty big pause on that, given all the situations.
We all paused.
Yeah, we all paused, right? And so although I did onboard a consultant team, and so they were doing some technical analyses, for that greenhouse gas assessment and some other things. But we really re-kicked it off earlier this year in terms of, getting out there, getting things moving again. And so we're really our goal of the office is that we're centering equity throughout the climate strategy. And so, so the goal of these sessions is really to understand what are people's lived experiences around sustainability issues, and how do we ensure that we're embedding those lived experiences and the challenges therein into the strategies that get created through the climate strategy. Mm-hmm. And so, a few other pieces about the climate strategy. So climate, obviously seems kind of abstract for a lot of folks. And so we're really thinking about it in two different ways. So one way is we're thinking about how do we need to reduce the amount of carbon pollution that we emit as a city, right? Mm-hmm. Carbon pollution contributes to global warming, global climate change, the effects of which we're already experiencing today. Right. We've seen multiple flooding events this summer, 30,000 plus households flooded throughout the summer. And so we're also the second part of the climate strategy is looking at adaptation strategies. How do we prepare ourselves for what we used to call our new climate future, but which is actually our climate future today that mm-hmm. we're already experiencing? So mm-hmm. how do we enable residents, businesses, government institutions to be able to weather those impacts of climate change, just as flooding, high heat, power outages, et cetera, in a way that they're still able to thrive and survive in our city. So those are two main focuses of it. And then we are embedding equity throughout that through a variety of means, which I can talk about later.
Well, that was my follow-up question. You said that the office is centering equity, and I want to know exactly what that means and what that looks like in practice.
Right.
Because equity, we hear that word a lot. What does that mean?
Totally. So, So, I really believe, obviously, equity is, we want to see outcomes that are equitable, but I also believe that in order to achieve those outcomes and make them as equitable as possible, we need to embed equity into the actual process. And I also believe, equity is a process that we need to become comfortable with, and part of pursuing equity is being uncomfortable and being okay with being uncomfortable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so one thing that, so really what that is about for me is about opening ourselves up to other people's perspectives and really hearing those perspectives. And so one thing that we built into the process was a climate equity advisory council. And so that is essentially a group of residents, 13 residents from areas throughout the city that we, using analysis from U of M, we looked at and understood that those areas are probably more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change.
Yeah.
And so we picked residents that had a variety of skill sets, a variety of experiences, life experiences, and were representative of that multitude of geographic areas, of places that are experiencing and will probably experience more climate vulnerability. And so they've been meeting on a monthly basis, and they're really, they've developed through, we've engaged with some other facilitators, and they've been developing equity tools that they're applying to some of the project team's outputs to really kind of understand what are ways we could tweak what's being created to ensure that it will have better equity outcomes.
Right. So the question I have, because I've really appreciated your inclusive process for planning. Right?
We really.
It is exactly what needs to happen in that position. I had an opportunity to learn what a sustainability director was, and you came in, and the first thing you did was you got the community engaged in the process and educated people and brought people along. You've created a really compelling agenda for the city of Detroit. And equity is a huge issue. We know it's a huge issue. I was reading something about what would happen if Detroit's temperature just increased 2 degrees. Can you talk a little bit about some of the issues that you have gleaned during your time as sustainability director as concerns around climate equity?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I'll say, my office was created in 2017, and then we immediately embarked on the Sustainability Action Agenda, which was essentially a strategic sustainability plan for the city to understand where we should be going, how should we be addressing issues of sustainability.
Can I just reiterate, that was one of the best planning processes that I've seen the city.
Thank you. Yeah, we talked to over 6,000 Detroiters through surveys, through focus groups. We had sustainability ambassadors out in the community talking to folks. We had over 1,500 people respond to our survey, and in that survey, they said that a few kind of data points that I think point to climate vulnerability. And the survey is a little bit dated at this time, but again, it was over 1,600 folks that responded to that. And the top housing challenges that were identified was that 33% of folks identified utility affordability as a top housing challenge, with housing affordability second at 22%. So we know affordability overall is an issue, but I found it interesting that utility affordability was actually the primary issue that folks identified. And we know that frequently we talk about the utility cost burden, they usually say about like 10% of your income would be the maximum for utility cost burden. And we know that, I don't have the figures on me exactly, but we know that I believe over 30% of Detroiters actually experience a cost burden for utilities higher than that 10%. So that's an issue. We also we also learned that, 1/3 of folks reported being impacted by flooding, 51% someone often or very often, and another 30% occasionally. That's a recent flooding survey. So we know that, utility affordability, flooding are all issues that people are tremendously impacted by in the city. And we are seeing already increased temperatures happening in the city, increased flooding happening in the city, all which frankly, impacts people's quality of life very intensively.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the housing quality issue, we were just talking about it, and there's just a study that U of M conducted. I think Bridge reported
DMAX.
on it.
Yep. The DMAX survey.
Yep,
Yes,
the
the
DMAX
DMAX survey. That 37,360 people in the city of households in the city of Detroit are dangerously inadequate. And it seems as though when you start adding flooding and temperature increases to an already dangerously inadequate shelter, now you are really looking at more than discomfort or quality of life. You're looking at life itself, right?
Absolutely.
Can people survive living in these environments where, right now it is cold outside, y'all. It's the Indian summer. I hate to say that because I think that might be a negative statement. The elongated summer is over, okay? And
people still don't have furnaces from the floods.
People who don't have furnaces. Not a couple people. A lot of people don't have furnaces. So we deal with these temperature extremes.
Yes.
One of the exciting things I'm excited about you working on and taking some leadership and actually partnering with us on is this Resilient East Side initiative, saying we can't fix 37,360 houses in the next couple of years, but maybe we can provide some alternative places of shelter in these extreme weather events.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so I'm very excited to be working with you on that, Donna, and the idea of a resilience hub, right? And trying to develop a network of those places, whether they be a rec center, whether they be a wellness hub, such as where we are sitting right now, whether they be a daycare center, a child care center, and making the places that people go to and spend time on a daily basis can be a refuge for them in the case of a power outage, a flood emergency, a heat emergency, and then they can go there and be comfortable to be able to spend time in that place. So, because there's been a number of studies of, and I'm not speaking necessarily in Detroit, but there's been a number of studies of like cooling centers throughout the country that many times they don't get utilized a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And so, because there's this idea of like trusted voice, trusted messenger, trusted place, right? And so if you're out of power, you're out of, and you need to run your CPAP machine or whatever, you're not going to go to somewhere you've never been. Right. To do that. You're going to go to somewhere you trust. And so really, I think, developing programming that makes people feel welcome in a place, I think is just as important as the other technical aspects, which I didn't really touch on. But the idea would be that you would have solar, you would have a battery, you would potentially have a generator such that if the power went out in the surrounding areas, that place would still be able to maintain power.
Joel, how is the city prepared to respond to what we believe residents are experiencing all over the city in climate crisis, flooded basements? And we talked to a resident earlier today who's working to get water out of her basement, right? The loss of furnaces and hot water tanks, and we're getting ready to go through a Michigan winter. People are in climate crisis right now as we speak. Right. And I'm sure within these town halls, residents who have the opportunity to speak will express that. How is the Office of Sustainability, how is the city prepared to respond to that?
That's a great question. It's a very hard question, obviously.
Yeah.
And so, I think, obviously post flooding, there was a number of cleanup efforts that were done that were helping. The city helped. I wish I knew the number off the top of my head, but a significant number of folks helped were helped to get their basements cleaned out.
Yeah.
At no cost. And so certainly I think that emergency response was an overall effective one. But I think that, I've been talking with some of my other directors at the city, and thinking about how do we scale up programs that can help people make their homes resilient to these flooding events, right?
But when I look at what the city really wants to change things.
Yeah.
The city says, we're going to tear down every blighted structure in the city of Detroit, and we're going to raise however many. So far, I think we spent about $600 million and counting, demolishing homes. This is bringing it to scale.
Yes.
Or we say we're going to raise this money for strategic neighborhoods, and there's this big price tag attached to it. And then when it comes to furnaces, it's like, well, we're going to try to piece together this resource and help people with this resource. And it feels as though the scale of intervention in these homes is so much less than the scale even of tearing down a blighted home where people don't live. And I'm not saying blighted homes don't need to come down. I'm just thinking through the scale of things. The $30 million for home repair out of an $800 million budget. I'll do the math in a few minutes, but I think it's a very small percentage of those dollars. When you look at that, I guess the question that some of us have is, when are we going to do it at scale? And my other question is, what is infrastructure? Is a furnace infrastructure? Certainly infrastructure inside my home.
Great question.
But, what is infrastructure?
Yes.
And will the city make meaningful investments in the kind of infrastructure that we feel? Because a combined sewer system sounds really good, separating the sewer systems. I need help in my home right now. And it's a matter of life or death for some people. Or it's a matter of staying in Detroit or running away because you can no longer afford to stay here and live here safely and happily.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I think to address this flooding issue, I think that we need to do things at every scale, right? I think we saw that in the flooding issue, unfortunately, our basements are part of the infrastructure system, right? We observe that very intimately, unfortunately. Family members, many neighbors experience that. And so I think we need to recognize that we need to work with residents on the ground to think about how do we reduce their household's potential. So just to back up, when we talk about climate vulnerability, there's three different components. We talk about exposure. So that's like, what event are you exposed to? But then there's like adaptive capacity, like how are you able to adapt as a household? Right. Yeah. Or as a system.
Teach us this vocabulary.
And then there's also sensitivity is the other piece of it. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's like, how sensitive are you as a household? Typically elderly households are more sensitive, those with a medical challenge or medical condition. And so we're actually doing a climate vulnerability analysis and map for the whole city to identify those most vulnerable areas using those three different factors. But anyway, I digress a little bit into the data. I apologize. But I do believe that we do need to address the flooding vulnerability at kind of different scales, right? So we need to address the household scale. And I agree, Donna, we need to address it at a massive scale. I don't disagree with you there. And then we need to address it at a neighborhood scale, right? Can we do neighborhood-based green stormwater infrastructure or even gray stormwater infrastructure, such that if there's a neighborhood that experiences flooding, how do we pull some of that water out of the system at that point? And then there's the larger sewer separation projects, which there's a whole series. I've seen the spreadsheet of prioritized lists and what's going to have the most impact. And we need to find the money and do those ones that are going to have the most impact. So,
you know what else we need? We need the Director of Climate Sustainability to be a member of the mayor's cabinet. And we need the Director of Sustainability to be engaged in every single decision around development, around housing, around everything that we do. If we're really serious about sustainability is not one of those things you do as a sidebar. It has to be integrated into the central part of the workings of the city.
Because your ability to just gather
I think
data and engage folks. I mean, it's so so valuable to the sustainable agenda in the city of Detroit. And I was going to ask about that, Donna, like interdepartmental integration at the city. Like, what does that look like?
It even beyond integration, power, right?
Yeah.
You've got to give power to the position of the sustainability director. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because I'm certain that you, like anybody who has this knowledge, has a wish that your knowledge can be used in every realm. But we want to see you at the table when the community benefits are being negotiated. We want to see you at the table when we're talking about what's going on with the stormwater so that we can make sure that all of this knowledge you have and all of these contacts you have with the community are being taken into account at the time decisions are being made, not after the fact. And again, not as icing on a cake that somebody else baked, but icing's delicious. But, we really want this to be part of how the city does business. And I was really excited. It felt like in the city charter recommendations, one of the things they were looking at was building up a Department of Sustainability. Are there examples of cities where this is being done?
I'm sure there's many examples of cities where it's being done. Actually, one of the things I've been working on this week is that we're doing a virtual conference for the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, and that actually something that gives me life because I'm able to talk to my colleagues around the country. So, there's a number of cities where I think it's being centralized, and I can't disagree with what you're saying.
All right.
Joel, I want to ask you about the plan for the town halls. So next week is also an election week, and I know that the town halls are scheduled for the first week of November. Can you let residents know how they can plug in?
Absolutely. So if you go to detroitmi.gov/climate, detroitmi.gov/climate, you can register for those town halls. So there's going to be one on the 9th. There's going to be one on the 10th and one on the 13th. And they're in the evenings and during the day so that folks who need to work during the day are able to access those. They're all going to be virtual, so you can log on and become a part of the conversations.
So Detroit, if you are interested in, number one, making energy and water bills more affordable, improving access to reliable transportation, making parks and green spaces welcoming to everyone, improving air quality and reducing asthma, building resilience into the day-to-day lives of Detroiters, and inclusive public engagement. Tap in to these town halls.
Right. Yeah. Well, while we have you here, I do have a couple of questions about sustainability and where we are right now. In addition to planning, what else is being done to improve sustainability in the city of Detroit right now? How is the city, making good on this investment?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great question. Well, so one thing is that we are undergoing a dramatic expansion of our recycling infrastructure. And so we're going to be both expanding residential recycling as well as launching a commercial recycling route so that businesses that want to recycle are able to do so. We're rolling out recycling both to city parks and also to city buildings. So I think that's a really exciting thing that my office was involved in. We actually were able to get a grant for helping to do that, as well as put in city money to do that. So that's one exciting thing. We're thinking in terms of city operations about how do we integrate electric vehicles into city operations, obviously reducing emissions, reducing carbon from city vehicles. We're looking at how do we, retrofit city buildings to be both resilient to climate, but also reduce carbon emissions. So those are a few examples. We are getting several electric buses. DDOT is as well to pilot that technology. The heavy duty is maybe not as far along as some of the light duty stuff. So those are a few examples I have. But I mean, I think so the Sustainability Action Agenda really laid out a very broad vision of how do we have healthy, thriving Detroiters? How do we have affordable and high quality homes? How do we have clean and connected neighborhoods? And then how do we have an equitable green city? And the equitable green city really is largely about climate, both our low carbon future, reducing the amount of carbon, as well as getting prepared for the impacts of climate that we're already seeing down the pike. So one exciting thing that I announced with Palencia Mobley, Deputy Director at DWSD, was actually in the neighborhood right off of Rouge Park. We're actually creating a green stormwater infrastructure thing that's going to actually take 1,200 houses off of the combined sewer and use a constructed wetland lake in the park to be able to store that water so that it slows it going into this combined sewer system, which is pretty exciting. I think we need to replicate that and do things like that throughout the city, certainly.
Yeah, we have some ideas here on the east side for things that can be done to help slow the movement of water into the areas like Jeff Chalmers, where you have so much flooding. We actually have work that was done by the University of Michigan a few years ago. I think it's called the Stronger Together Improvement Plan or something like that, where they looked at how we could use the vacancy to promote
strengthening and transforming.
Thank you. I knew it was strong.
I'm like, what are you talking about? I worked on that one. Yeah.
Strengthening, transforming. Thank you. But one of the things we looked at was green infrastructure in the Riverbend neighborhood, which is just north of Jeff Chalmers. And all of the vacancy there, we could create wetlands, we could create bioswales and rain gardens and do things at scale to reduce the flow of water from one part of, into that neighborhood. The other thing that I'm really becoming fixated on is this Oakland-Macomb interceptor. And the idea that Russ Ballant popularized that we could create retention basins that would slow the return of that water into the pumping stations.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can look at things that don't require the separation. And if the city is serious about green infrastructure, it feels to me like there are projects that we have conceptualized, not designed, but conceptualized. We know where the lots are. We know who owns them. We have a good stock project where we have identified several places where we can divert stormwater from the streets in an area that is just west of here. To what extent can we work with your office to at least bring these concepts to the attention of DWSD, which says it wants to invest more in green infrastructure so that we can begin doing things on the east side? Happy to see it happen near Rouge, but we want it here too.
Sure. No, absolutely. No, I think the more of those projects we can get done and get moving, absolutely. So definitely work with my office to move some of that stuff forward, and willing to be an advocate for that, because I think, again, one of the goals and the actions in the Sustainability Action Agenda was, increase the amount of distributed green stormwater infrastructure. And so I think, we need the support of community partners to be able to do that, certainly. And yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Because maybe that's one of the ways that we can work with your office, is that you can be a connector to some of the city offices, so that at least you can connect what we're doing in our community level to the stated goals and objectives of the various city departments, because it's really hard to navigate sometimes.
Sure. No, that often tends to be my role, is connecting folks at the city. Absolutely. And I know we're not always as accessible as we should be. So certainly definitely want to play that role where I'm able to. Yeah, for sure.
All right, Joe, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure to have you.
You're welcome. I am honored to be on the show. I'm a frequent listener to the show, and I get lots of great information and perspectives and grounding when I listen to it. So I'm very honored to be able to actually be on the show and be a part of it. And I think you all have filled, for me at least, you've filled a hole in the local news and perspectives infrastructure that I don't think was there before your creation as Authentically Detroit. So I definitely appreciate you all. So
we appreciate you. Bless you, man.
We are
Thank
so
you.
honored.
We are honored.
Honestly, when we started this venture a couple years ago, we had no idea. So every time we hear something like that, it's just heartwarming. It's in Orlando.
Like, oh my gosh.
In Orlando, Authentically Detroit is now its own entity.
Yes.
It is no
We
longer
have grown.
just a project that has no home. It's its own entity, Authentically Detroit LLC.
Yes.
Oh, it's an LLC
It
now.
is an LLC
It is.
now
Nice.
because we have decided that it's something worth investing in and growing. And so you might be the second guest we've had. I think the
Since
first
the
one
LLC.
was the debate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, So anyway, welcome.
Wow, that's
Thank you.
exciting.
Yes.
That's very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats to you too, Joel, and good luck with the town halls and the department and everything that you're doing. We are big Joel Howrani Heeres fans over here. If you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Authentically Detroit, or email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. It's time for shout outs. Donna, do you have any shout outs today?
No. Once again, I want to shout out Samaritan Manor.
Yes.
I want to shout out Reginald Hartsfield, who is one of the owners of Samaritan Manor until the end of this year, and my friend David Turner, who helped connect us, as well as everybody who just gave us information. I want to shout out the state of Michigan for completing its investigation and finding
She
citations.
was not playing.
And and shout out to my mother for being such a strong woman and not allowing herself to go, to just succumb to whatever kinds of treatment people were willing to give her. I'm really happy about that. I'm feeling optimistic.
And it's good to see you
for the
feeling
first time in a long
optimistic and
time.
better. I know that
Thank
this has
you.
been a tough few weeks for you, and it was hard to watch my friend go through that. But I'm glad that we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel. I want to shout out, Donna, our Facebook audience. We are live streaming on Facebook as we are recording this episode, and it's been pretty interactive so far. So without an announcement or any publicity surrounding this, thank you all so much for taking the time to view us on Facebook. Also, next week, we will be hosting a series of interviews on election day to sort of wrap around what happens at our municipal elections. So be sure to tune in next week. We're going to have some of everybody up in here. So stay tuned. Joe, you have any shout outs?
Yeah, definitely I do. I want to shout out all the members of the Climate Equity Advisory Council who have been serving over the last 4 months as, again, I talked about them earlier, but really digging into some kind of wonky topics and really trying to offer some constructive feedback to me and my office and the consultant team that I have on board. So thank you all to that. And thanks to the engagement team who have been helping to facilitate that whole process. Definitely appreciate that. I want to shout out to everyone who is put their hat in the ring for elected office, because that is a challenging thing to do. And I appreciate that. And we need good people in those positions. And so thank you to all who are participating in this in an active way. And then just shout out to my family, my son Theo and my daughter Ruby. That's all.
Oh, wow. Hey, Theo and Ruby. Thanks for listening. Listen, we thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, we want you to catch the wave.